introduction. Thank you very much for having me. And I'm very sorry that I cannot join you in person in Ljubljana because I am ill. So please excuse my voice. I hope you will somehow manage to understand. So I would like to talk about the intersections among post-dramatic theatre, the political and the comic in my paper. While comedy has traditionally been interwoven with politics on stage in such genres as satire for centuries, in case of post-dramatic theatre, the relation between the comic and the political is far more complex and often rather ambivalent. In this presentation, I'm going to explore such an interrelation using the Czech production Our Swaggerers. And now, let me share my screen. Maybe I'm sharing it already.
No.
It says that I'm not able to share my screen. That would be a pity. Can we please arrange it somehow? I'm not sure. Can you hear me still?
Yes, yes.
She can hear us.
Zoom tells me that host a disabled participant screen sharing. So I can't share my presentation, I'm afraid.
Is it possible now?
Can you share it now?
I will try. It looks good. Let me check. Yeah, it looks good. Okay. This is I'm trying to share it. Allow it. Okay. Consistent references. Usually it's very easy, so it's strange. It asks so many questions. Oh, maybe not, no? You cannot see it, right?
No, we can't see it. No.
Yeah. That's a pity. Anyway. Okay, we will go without pictures, unfortunately. So, once again, let me introduce the production I'm going to talk about. It's called Our Swaggerers, and it was premiered in 1994 in Prague at the theatre on the Balustrade. In times of the post-1989 social transition and shortly after the division of Czechoslovakia, Lébl settled on a canonical 19th century play, Our Swaggerers, which commented on the Czech national character. Lébl, who was perceived as the post-modernist enfant terrible in the Czech theatre milieu, adopted the original playtext and added a number of new layers and perspectives. In his production, he, among other things, ironized Czech national myths, employing a number of techniques later associated with the concept of post-dramatic theatre. In doing so, the production mostly communicated in a light-hearted manner, and also for this reason, its socio-critical dimension seems to have been overlooked by most of the spectators and theatre critics. Which factors contributed to the fact that the comic overshadowed the political in this production will be discussed in my presentation. To give you some context, in the Czech discourse on theatre, the term postmodernism has been employed rather casually since the late 1980s. It has generally been associated with genre blending, formal experimentation, emphasis on style and metaphor, and deconstruction of both the plot and the coherent interpretation of the production. As for the comic aspect, irony, playfulness, and parody have often been listed among the features of postmodern theatre. Typically, the Czech theatre ensembles that were labeled as postmodernist before 1989 did not explicitly address political issues on stage, due in part to the continued existence of censorship, of course. Therefore, this up-and-coming aesthetic acquired a reputation for being apolitical and stayed on well into the 1990s, when postmodernist theatre became a leading trend in the Czech lands. A number of features of Czech postmodern theatre aesthetic seem largely to match the attributes of post-dramatic theatre as famously described by Hans-Dietz Lehmann in 1999. As for Lehmann's approach to the comedy-like aspect of post-dramatic productions, it did not stand in the center of his attention in his monograph Post-Dramatic Theatre, as you probably know. In more depth, Lehmann handled the issue a bit later in 2000s, focusing specifically on the genre of tragedy, not comedy. According to my current knowledge, the interrelation between post-dramatic theatre, the political and the comic has been academically covered only rarely so far. The same applies for the issue of comedy and post-dramatic theatre, an exception being represented by Jure Gandberg's thought-provoking study on the nature of the character in post-dramatic comedy. Going back to my case study, in Lébl's aesthetics, one could easily point out a number of attributes listed by Lehmann in post-dramatic theatre, especially visual dramaturgy, non-hierarchy, simultaneity, semantic density, plethora, musicalization, and physicality. In contrast to most post-dramatic directors, however, Lébl did not deconstruct the playtext. On the contrary, drawing on a meticulously close reading, he typically developed numerous playful, often intertextual, associations and allusions. Lébl's work has been theorized by several Czech theatre scholars. However, the political aspect of Lébl's work, as well as the comic one, have been mostly overlooked. Firstly, let's discuss the political aspect of his work. Looking closely at the archival sources, one realizes that Lébl openly declared his stance concerning the relationship between theatre and the political in the early 1990s. In an interview he said, "When a person proclaims they are doing political theatre, it's as if they said they were doing a blue color." This confirms that he indeed regarded the political dimension an integral part of theatre, even if his work has rarely been perceived in this way. Arguably, our Swaggerers reveals his standpoint more clearly than his other productions. Lébl's decision to stage this play reflected the socio-political climate of the early 1990s. Apparently, he conceived the intention to stage the play in the early 1993, immediately after the division of Czechoslovakia and establishment of an independent Czech Republic. Lébl settled on a canonical 19th century play written by Ladislav Strupežnický in realist style. The play was originally premiered in 1887 at the National Theatre in Prague. The play satirized Czech society, especially Czech villagers, and emphasized their negative characteristics like stubbornness, narrow-mindedness, and pride. Lébl adopted the original playtext, directed the production, and also designed the set. In his production, he followed and amplified the playwright's sarcastic view of the Czech identity and added topical references to current social and political issues. When directing the production, Lébl employed a number of aesthetic strategies related to the comic, such as hyperbole, parody, irony, and playful intertextuality. Therefore, the political was very often interwoven with the comic on stage. For instance, Lébl deconstructed myths about Czech greatness. He did so by ironizing several commonplace emblems of Czech national mythology, such as the legend of the Bloody Knights. Probably you've never heard of them, but these knights represented an army of warriors resting in the mountain of Blaník, which is a legendary Czech mountain. And these warriors are said to be always ready to ride out and save the Czech nation should it come under threat anytime. In the production of Lébl, one of the main characters represented one of the Bloody Knights. Wearing a heavy medieval armor made him an utterly clumsy and anachronistic figure whose comicality was even amplified by numerous physical extempores. Moreover, the director challenged the image of Czech society as nationally and racially homogeneous. He emphasized the Jewishness of the characters, in particular the characters of the publican and his wife, who even performed the Czech national anthem on stage, again with a comic or rather tragicomic overtones, because the publican played the melody on the beer mugs. Lébl also added German lines to the part of one of the lead characters, hinting at the pre-1945 German population of the Czech lands. The staging also broached the subject of race. Lébl cast a Guinea-Bissau-born black actor in a minor role of village teacher, raising the issue of racial plurality and also the issue of the Czechs' relation to the otherness and foreignness. At the time, xenophobia was hardly a rare occurrence, due in part to the country's 40-year isolation from the more ethnically diverse Western countries. In 1999, the Czech sociologist Jiří Nešíková commented on the condition of the Czech 1990s society in a way that largely corresponded to the issues Lébl performed in his production. Quote, "Whether we want to or not, we Czech will have to get used to living with people of different races, customs and religions. Perhaps our fear of everything foreign is what makes us insist that the traditional relationship between men and women be maintained within the model of the family. In a way, our attitude is not so far from the attitudes of Islamic fundamentalists. Any group that feels threatened tends to hold together and emphasize its differentness with the help of various symbols." End quote. And it was precisely those symbols that received an ironical treatment in Lébl's production. In other words, it is beyond question that his production tackled important social issues of the day. In 1994, he was among the first theatre makers to put xenophobia on the public agenda. But to what extent was Lébl's innovative contribution to the public debate noticed by the public sphere? It is likely that Lébl's young audiences understood these efforts. However, when reading reviews, it is obvious that most reviewers either completely overlooked or attached little importance to the social and political poignancy of the production. The reviews were predominantly concerned with matters of aesthetic and the question whether Lébl's postmodern treatment was a good match for this classical Strobežnický's play. The political elements were barely commented upon, and if so, such remarks were rather passing and vague. One of the rare characterization of the production's both political and comic dimensions was published by the critic Petr Pavlovský, quote, "Lébl's production is full of grotesque, hurtful comicality, which hits its target as carpet bombing does." End quote. In other cases, remarks on the socio-critical layer of the production were offhand and superficial. Casting the black actor with foreign accent was typically commented only briefly, as an extravagant gesture, even perceived as a superficial joke. As for Lébl's emphasis on Jewishness of some characters, only one critic, Jana Macharická, linked his doing with criticism of xenophobia, but considered such a step oversimplifying. Generally speaking, it is obvious that the reviewers did not give serious consideration to the social and political dimension of the issues at hand. Why was it so? First Firstly, I would argue that most of the critics did not consider xenophobia and other criticism of the Czech national character major items on the public agenda. It is as if their enactment on stage slipped their attention, which may also be due to the fact that these issues were marginalized in the public debate at the time. Secondly, I would describe the omission of the reviewers' unfamiliarity with the post-dramatic treatment of the political as present in the production. During the communist era, the political in Czech theatre was articulated in neat dichotomies, us versus them, while in Lébl's production, the political attained pluralistic and heterogeneous qualities. Now coming to the end. Thirdly and finally, and this point is closely linked to my previous point, I believe that the critics were unable to process the political when performed in a post-dramatic aesthetic code, which was still relatively new to them, and hence not easy to decipher. As I have already mentioned, Lébl staged the political with a high degree of ambiguity, rendering it hard to translate into the language of the established discourse, political discourse. This ambiguity was even multiplied by the comic tone of most of the performance, which often overshadowed the more serious layers of the piece. That was especially the case when a less experienced, typically country audience participated in the performance. To them, the character of the teacher played by a black actor did not refer to Czech xenophobia. He was only a black man dressed in the Czech national costume. How strange. How funny. In such situations, the laughter of the audience rather stultified the socio-critical edge of the performance, and the comic dimension somehow subverted the political one. Thank you for your attention.